I've had tons of stories over the years where I had a practitioner just a couple of weeks ago. He's like, methylene blue cured my anxiety. I'm like, it did what? He's like, yeah, I don't know. I've had anxiety for 30 years. I started taking methylene blue at just a low dose. Gone. Interesting, right? Because what can happen is that people think that anxiety is related to like a mental health disorder. But the problem is a lot of mental health disorders, in quotes, are actually mitochondrial disorders.
Would you like to learn more about the topics that were discussed today? Join us at radicallyhealthy.com, where we're combining lifestyle with other tools to add to our toolbox. We have many offerings from a free community to a private community and even one-on-one support. Hope to see you there. Hello, welcome everyone to today's podcast. Today we are talking to I'm going to call you the Dr. Tina Moore of Methylene Blue, because you are go-to for all things Methylene Blue. So we're going to talk about, what are the myths that are out there, the misconceptions, who could use it, who can't, and how can it help us, and a whole bunch of other things. So thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Tina's a friend. I appreciate the way you've kind of described that. I do know a lot about methylene blue. I've been using it in clinical practice now for 5 years. We have hundreds of clinicians around the world that are using it in clinical practice. So we have a lot of experience and happy to share.
Today's episode is brought to you by Troscriptions, a company that's been helping me on my healing journey. They're considered one of the top troche companies because they're combining pharmaceutical grade material with clinical expertise and innovative formulas. All of their ingredients are tested for toxins, mold, impurities, and heavy metals. One of my favorite compounds from them is methylene blue, something you shouldn't be getting on Amazon because it's often contaminated. But here, these are clean, safe, and effective products. These troches are used in clinical practice, and it's not just an online trend. Troches are amazing because they absorb through your mouth and skip the digestive system, getting it into your system quicker. Each troche is scored into 4 for precise dosing as you titrate up and down. These are great for people who would love to improve their cognition, their mood, and their metabolism. Currently in our home, we're using Just Blue, which is just methylene blue. It's a consumer grade that you can purchase right on the website. I also love blue carnitine. This is something I use on the tough days when I really need to have focus and concentration. I love Tro Calm for training myself to get into the parasympathetic mode. Tro plus Immune is great for your immune system and helping with your sleep. And I love the Tro Zzz to assist on those nights when I really need a little help with my sleep. These have no junk fillers, no dyes, and no sugars. They're gluten-free. If you'd like to give Troscriptions a try and see if it can help you on your health journey, use the link below to save 10%. I hope you enjoy this interview. So what is your background? You're a doctor, and now you are part of the Troscriptions team.
Yeah, so I'm an internal medicine physician. I grew up the son of a chiropractor, though, so pretty out of the box thinking, but went to medical school with the idea of trying to figure out a way to create an integrative practice. So I did that through really the last 15 years now, creating an integrative practice outside of conventional medicine, combining lots of tools, technologies, practices. I became an expert in hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So I specialize that, and I still work on that particular modality and use it a lot in clinical practice. In 2019, in 2017, I met a clinician named Dr. Ted Achacoso, and Dr. Ted is a fantastic human, very, very smart. He's become a mentor over the years, and he created a nonprofit organization called Health Optimization Medicine and Practice. And this is Home Hope for short, and we incorporated it as a nonprofit in 2017. It trains practitioners on how to optimize health rather than focusing specifically on disease. And so that became the foundation of my integrative practice. And then in 2020, we launched Troscriptions, which is a company that was designed to help people right now while they're on that longer path of optimizing their health, which can take a while for people. It's not something that can happen overnight for most. And so what do we need help with? We need help with energy, focus, sleep, stress, immune system support, anxiety. And so the first compounds that we started playing with, and we were actually the first company to come out with a commercial methylene blue product back in 2020, was methylene blue. And we came out with something called blue carnitine in 2020, which is a combination of methylene blue with nicotine, caffeine, and CBD. And then shortly after, about 6 months later, now during the pandemic, about June of 2020, we came out with Just Blue, our pure methylene blue product. So those are the first ones that we came out with way back in 2020.
So first thing I want to just hammer out is, how come some of us need more? How come we can't just get sunlight and eat meat and eat whole foods and get exercise and feel better? Because I've been trying that for like 10 years and it wasn't It was moving the needle, but the needle wasn't sticking, and I needed more. What's going on?
I mean, there are two major things that we always have to think about here. I mean, certainly diet, exercise, getting yourself, significantly dialed in there is a huge step for many, many people. But it may not be the only steps that you can take or need to take, especially if your nervous system is on overload. If your nervous system's on overload and you're sympathetically dominant, so this is your fight or flight nervous system, right? So it's called our autonomic nervous system. It has two aspects. It has your parasympathetic and your sympathetic nervous system. Your sympathetic nervous system, is what helps you feel awake. It make you feel drive. It gives you like your fight or flight, like, oh goodness, I need to run away from a predator, or I need to do something very quickly to save my life. And unfortunately, most of us are living in that fight or flight mode most of the time. And the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the other part of the autonomic nervous system, is what the part of our nervous system that helps us rest, digest, relax, detoxify, and recover. And so the issue is that if you're not getting into that parasympathetic mode, you're not going to be able to actually heal and actually recover and actually see the gains that you're trying to get so hard because you're working so hard at the gym. People don't actually realize that you don't actually make your gains while you're in the gym. You make your gains after you finish your workout when you become more parasympathetic. So there's this huge, US culture of the hustle, right? Which is, I'll sleep when I'm dead. Sleep is for quitters. These are things that we had on shirts in medical school when I was in medical school. It was like ridiculous things like this. And then the challenge is that trying to re-educate that culture by doing more to try to get ourselves better is sometimes actually at some points it becomes counterintuitive or counterproductive, really, because you're actually, instead of doing more, you have to do less to see more results. And that usually means, calming down your nervous system. And so that's where we have, a real significant emphasis in the education that I always do with my clients and patients on the GABAergic neurotransmitter system, which is GABA is this neurotransmitter in our brain that helps calm things down. It's the brakes of our brain. And most people are deficient in GABA because they're overstressed, they're sometimes undernourished, but definitely overstressed. And as a result of that overstress, they deplete GABA, and they have issues with their gut. They have issues with hormones. They have issues with multiple different things, toxins in their environment, toxins in their body that are causing issues with this stress response and then the GABA deficiency that comes. And when you have less GABA around, you have more anxiety, you have more insomnia, you have more depression. And so that's a big bucket we can talk about. And the other big aspect of this is that there's certain things from a diet and exercise perspective that can significantly help overall from, you making you feel better. But your mitochondria, the part of your cells that make energy, may still need more support than just diet and exercise are going to be able to do. Unfortunately, our diets, even if we have the best diet ever, whatever you define that is going to be deficient in vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and cofactors, because the plants and the animals that we eat now compared to what we had 50 or 60 years ago, significantly deficient in these. And you need significant amounts of those to have an optimized mitochondrial function, and the mitochondria are the part of our cells that make energy.
Can we start with the GABA deficiency? Because
Yeah.
so I've been working on, I'm stuck in fight or flight. My autoimmune is going crazy. My inflammation markers are going up despite diet and exercise, despite all the things I'm throwing at it. And when I look at my stress score when I'm sleeping, I am actually, I think, more stressed out in sleep than when I'm awake. How do I fix that?
So that's really such an important part, right? Because it's not like it's just your parasympathetic nervous system and figuring that part out, and then the mitochondria figuring that part out separately. They're very much intertwined. When your stress is overloaded at all times, you're significantly causing stress on your mitochondria. Your glucose levels, your sugar levels are going to go up, and that's going to cause stress in the mitochondria. You're going to deplete antioxidants as well, and the antioxidants help you balance out the energy that we do make from our mitochondria as well. So for me, what I'm often doing is a combined strategy here, which is balancing out the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system at the same time as supporting mitochondrial function. And that's like the amazing, amazing benefit of doing these things together, because if you do, the power is just gigantic. But you can't just do one without the other. And that's really what's important here. But when it comes down to answering your question, the question is a multifaceted one to answer. When it comes to understanding why you're in sympathetic overload, this can be from a lot of different reasons. This can be because you have 4 kids at the house and you don't have time for yourself. You and I both know how that feels. It could be because you have significant trauma in your history that you need to address, whether it be big T or little t. Those little t's can add up over time. And if you've had, for example, a car accident, you have PTSD, you were in the wars and you're a naval veteran or a veteran of any of the armed services. If you had, if anything like that can overdrive your nervous system. And it could be one of those things that be very insidious. It's not like, one day you were totally cool and, too cool for school, and, had your feet up on the chairs and cross-legged with your arms behind, and like, I'm just hanging out. And the next day it's like, holy shit, what am I supposed to do? Like, it doesn't work like that.
Oh,
It compiles over time. Right. And then all of a sudden you get to a place where you're like, oh man, I used to be able to sleep without any trouble. I used to be able to just fall asleep, no problem. Now my mind's racing. I used to be able to, relax at any time I needed to, but now I feel like I can't, wind down or like switch back and forth very easily from a sort of fight or flight mode to relaxation mode. So the key is the awareness of it, the awareness that, and having sleep scores and sleep trackers and other kinds of trackers could be helpful, because sometimes actually what can happen, Adrian, is that we become sort of numb to understanding how we feel because we've been in this position for as long as we have. And so as a result of that, we don't even know that we're stressed. Like our score says, or like your score is like, oh, you're stressed all day, but like you didn't feel any different than you typically did, is because you've sort of got compensated for it in some way. And so the first ways to understand this is to try to have a meta awareness and say, okay, what are the things in my life that are causing a lot of stress? And then the next aspect of it is like, what are you going to do about those things? Is it something where you need to go see a therapist and need to, work on various aspects of your previous history, whether it be, trauma or an accident or, a military or whatever it might be, because addressing those things psychosocially, emotionally will be a huge have a huge impact on your nervous system regulation. The other aspect of it is finding things in your life that are going to help you relax. And that could be just scheduling yourself less throughout the day. So if you're doing meetings and back to back for 8 hours, maybe take 10 minutes between meetings and try to learn how to breathe, right? And starting different types of practices, breath practices, yoga practices, mindfulness practices, times away from your phone, so you're not checking your phone, ways you're just basically trying to realize that there are ways to downregulate your nervous system and practicing them. So there's a lot of them, of course, but that's kind of like a smattering of things that I think about. And then I also think about, of course, there's a dietary component here, right? If you're already dialing in your diet, that's great, but dialing in your diet in certain ways that are going to have certain types of food in there, they can help with relaxation, can be really helpful. That's like the GABA system that we were talking about before, like making sure that you have a bowel system, like that your gut's not leaky and you don't have a lot of inflammation there. So that could be a big part of causing stress and inflammation too. So anyway, that's a lot of information, but basically you're looking at, number one, a diagnosis, right? Like, do you have stress and are you having a hard time calming down? Diagnosis can be from just pure awareness, or it could be from using trackers and other things like that can help you. Then the next up is like sort of your therapeutics, right? It's going to be diet, it's going to be lifestyle maneuvers, it's going to be supplementation, and then using those things over time to help rebalance that nervous system.
So we have all this stress and then it starts affecting our mitochondria,
Yeah.
but nobody ever talks about like, how do you fix the mitochondria? Are they just broken forever?
I mean, the idea really is that our mitochondria are recycling themselves all the time. And so you're not like the mitochondria that you were born with were recycled within about a week or two. So you're always recycling mitochondria. And so you always have the capacity to make them work more efficiently, no matter if you're 5 years old or if you're 95 years old. You can still have capacity to make these mitochondria work better. I mean, the most common reasons we have mitochondrial dysfunction, the number one really is stress as a category, but this could be stress from physical, psychosocial, emotional stress, people in your lifestyle, sort of people in your life, like toxic people. It could be snoring partners, like lots of different things that can cause stress. Insulin resistance, medications, infections. So multiple things can cause mitochondrial stress, but it is reversible. But it's not something that happens and reverses very quickly. So oftentimes that's why we go to things that can regulate the nervous system, things that regulate the GABA system, for example, to help with the stress, or the methylene blue aspect of things to help with the mitochondrial function. So that methylene blue is a very amazing compound to help really kind of help support mitochondrial function very quickly with your patients and clients or with yourself while you're trying to work on optimizing your mitochondria in other ways.
How does it help the mitochondria?
So methylene blue is a really interesting compound. It works by both enhancing your capacity to make energy and also by enhancing your capacity to detoxify as well. And so the enhancing capacity to make energy, so we need to make about 165 pounds of energy every single day. Okay. Some of the areas in our body have a lot more need for energy than others. So our brain, our heart, our liver, musculoskeletal tissue, and actually the number one area, number one part of our body that requires the most energy is actually ovaries and sperm to make babies. Babies are highly energy intensive. It makes sense. And so, especially as a female, you know this, growing a baby. And so, 4 times over for you and my wife together. And so, this is a lot of energy that it makes that's required. And so, we're seeing fertility rates go down dramatically. We're seeing that brain fog, concentration problems, cardiac, liver, musculoskeletal. These are all mitochondrial issues. And so it's something where methylene blue can come in and start rebuilding the mitochondria. It does this by helping you make energy in mitochondria that aren't working very well, and then it helps you bypass various areas that aren't working and help rebuild areas at the same time to make them work better. When we make energy, we don't only just make energy, we also make waste products, in quotes, of energy metabolism. These are things that, like carbon dioxide or water, but also these other molecules called reactive oxygen species, or ROS. And that these are these small reactive signaling molecules that give us an understanding of giving our mitochondria an understanding of what to do. Should they make more energy, make less? And we have antioxidants in the body that help neutralize these ROS. So, but if you're antioxidant deficient, you're not going to be able to tolerate making as much energy without making too much stress in the system. And so what methylene blue can do, not only does it help with the energy production side of things, but it also helps with the detoxification side. So it can work directly as an antioxidant. And at higher doses, it actually can work as an anti-infective as well, as long with an as an antioxidant. And also in these higher doses, it actually can increase the production of our own body's antioxidant system as well. So in essence, what I tell people is that methylene blue is energy and detox in the same compound. The key is to start off at very low doses, 4, 8, 16 milligrams, and then round up or increase your dose as you need to, as you're starting to feel the effects of that improved energy capacity and detoxification.
Usually, every time somebody says detox, I go, because sorry, I took a quarter of the blue cannatine before our
Nice.
before our meeting here. Usually when anybody says detox, I get worried because I get Herx reactions pretty easily, but I've taken up to half of one of these so far.
Okay.
And I've also done the Just Blue, and I've never had any Herx reactions from this. Does that ever happen?
It can happen. Yeah. It depends on where people are starting and kind of where they need to go. But if you start off at low doses, starting off at a quarter or a half of the Just Blue or the blue cannatine, it doesn't typically happen significantly. But if you started off with like a full troche, for example, which is the dosage form we use, it's a dissolvable lozenge that is scored. So you can take a quarter, a half, or full, and they're designed for the mouth, but they can be swallowed as well, especially the blue ones. You'll notice with this titration of like slowly increasing the dose, it typically doesn't happen many detox issues, but it can. People can get those herxing kinds of symptoms, like a little bit of headache, a little bit of muscle pain, joint pain, a little bit of abdominal distress. But it doesn't typically happen if you start off slowly and increase your dose. Where people get into trouble is that there's a lot of products out on the market that are much higher dosed than what we have. And it's not required from a mitochondrial perspective to have those kinds of higher doses. And it's sort of you get a lot of the detox symptoms that happen when you start taking 40, 50, 60, 70 milligrams of methylene blue right away without understanding why you would be taking that kind of high dose. Because in general, the lower doses, like 4 milligrams to 16, maybe up to 25 milligrams, are really great for mitochondrial support. So this is your brain fog, your concentration problems. This is your chronic fatigue. This is your irritability. This is your depression, anxiety, even. This could be all related to mitochondrial dysfunction. And I mean, I've had tons of stories, Adrian, over the years where, like, I had a practitioner just a couple of weeks ago. He's like, methylene blue cured my anxiety. I'm like, it did what? He's like, yeah, I don't know. I've had anxiety for 30 years. I started taking methylene blue at just a low dose, gone. And interesting, right? Because what can happen is that people think that, anxiety is like is related to like a mental health disorder, right? But the problem is, like, a lot of mental health disorders, in quotes, are actually mitochondrial disorders, right? And so if you optimize mitochondrial function, you're going to see some of these mental health problems go away or significantly mitigate. And there have been studies using methylene blue in depression, in bipolar. There's interest in schizophrenia as well. And I'm not telling anybody here to stop their drugs. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you have a willing practitioner to help you, you can work on potentially adding in something like methylene blue to help, work on some of these things, along with that, that parasympathetic activation. So for me, it's like always going hand in hand here. Like I want to optimize mitochondrial function. So what I'll often do, actually, Adrian, initially when I'm working with people is that, okay, you have a lot of stress and you probably have a lot of mitochondrial dysfunction, right? And they're obviously going in hand in hand. Like, where do you start? So what I would typically do is start with a little bit of methylene blue first, even before I leverage the GABA system too much, because the problem is if you make somebody too parasympathetic too quickly, so if you calm down their nervous system too fast, they might crash on you, and they might crash in a way that makes it very difficult for you to convince them to do it again. So because when you're always in the fight or flight mode and you learn to see and you actually start experiencing how it feels to calm down your nervous system, people can freak out. They can freak out because they're not used to feeling calm and their nervous system doesn't know how to react to that. So what you can do in compensation, what I found is start adding a little bit of methylene blue to help with that mitochondrial aspect of things. They start feeling a little bit better, a little bit more energy, the mitochondria more supported, and then you can start adding on the GABAergic sides, adding on the stress relief aspects, so that when they decrease that stress load, their mitochondria still have enough capacity so that it's not like a vacuum that you're creating where like all of a sudden the stress is gone, but the mitochondria don't work. And then it's like it could be a nasty combination for people. So I found that the best combination is like a little bit of methylene blue, titrate up the dose, start to feeling a little bit better. Sometimes the BLCarnivore, the one you have there too, and then adding in the GABAergic stress relief side, and then from there really starting to focus on that fight or flight down regulation, that parasympathetic activation, and then that combination is like a 1-2 power combo.
So I only took this one today because I wanted to be on top of my stuff because you are the Tina Moore of methylene blue and I wanted to be on it.
Sure,
but I also
sure.
have the Just Blue,
Yeah.
and that is more. Oh, I don't have it right here. That's more for it's just BLCarnivore. It doesn't have the other nootropics in it. I started out with a half one of these, and I was like, blah, 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 blah. So today I only took a quarter. It's pretty. This is pretty intense. I wouldn't take this every day personally, because it really gets you going.
The BLCarnivore is the one you have there. That's more our nootropic, as you described. It has nicotine, caffeine, CBD, and methylene blue. So it has the nootropics, methylene blue, CBD to help with supporting and also optimizing mitochondrial function, brain function. CBD is also a great neuroprotector. Caffeine and nicotine are fantastic stimulants. We use very low doses in BLCarnivore. It's designed to feel like you're on a stimulant pharmaceutical, but only for about 3 to 5 hours without the come down or crash. And only typically use maybe 3 days, 4 days a week for dedicated deep work, where the Just Blue is more directed in the sense of more health optimization, in the sense of you can take it more on a regular basis. It's supportive. It's helping with rebuilding your mitochondrial function. It's helping with detoxification. So I think of the Just Blue or pure methylene blue as something you use more kind of regular basis. And then the BLCarnivore using more as needed. That can change depending on the person, depending on what they need. Even with the Just Blue, if your mitochondria are getting more optimized over time, you probably will need less of it over time rather than more. Like, and when you're first starting and you're really trying to work on that mitochondrial function, like it takes time and it takes more consistent dosing, we've found, to see the benefits. You might have to be on it for 2, 4, 6 weeks until you can start really titrating down the dose and then be able to see that it can maintain the benefit of being on less of it. Now, if you're using it because you're more optimized and using it more for like endurance, performance, jet lag, going on an airplane, methylene blue is really protective in that capacity. Then in that case, you might just have to use it just periodically, just kind of as needed for that extra oomph.
I love that they're scored so we can break them down because I'm all about the lowest effective dose. Can you talk about the blue brain thing? I mean, I am going to pee blue later. It's funny. It's a funny thing, but a blue brain is not funny. Am I going to get a blue brain?
You're not going to get a blue brain. Don't worry. Methylene blue does concentrate in the urine. So if you take methylene blue, your urine will turn blue. If you've had vitamins in the morning, like your B vitamins, it might be like a neon green. It just depends on how your hydration status, what else you've had, but blue is the color that you will see there. Now, when it comes to turning other parts of your body blue, methylene blue got very, very popular over the last 6 months. And during that time, there were a lot of people trying to gain attention, the naysayers out there, conspiracy theorists. And one of the articles that came out was that if you're taking methylene blue, you're making your brain blue. What the article neglected to emphasize was that the amount of methylene blue that these patients who had died were given before they died was ginormous. It was around 3 milligrams per kilogram IV, so intravenous methylene blue. This is in people that had cardiopulmonary arrest, septic shock. They were going to die. They did die, and they were given these huge amounts of methylene blue as a potential rescue for the last ditch effort kind of thing. So if you're taking huge amounts, 3 milligrams per kilogram, which is the equivalent of about 250 or 300 milligrams orally or IV of methylene blue, your brain will turn blue because that's a ton of methylene blue. From a comparison perspective, I'm talking about 4 to 8, 16, 25 milligrams in total compared to 300 milligrams IV. Obviously, IV is going to hit the body much faster as well, get to the brain much faster compared to oral. So the risk of anything turning blue other than your pee is extremely low. From a clinical perspective, we don't typically use more than 100 milligrams a day of methylene blue and that's pretty rare to even use that kind of dosing. The average dosing from a mitochondrial perspective is going to be between 8 and 25 milligrams.
Okay, so now you guys have this both at a consumer level. I just ordered this right off of troscriptions.com, but you also have the prescription level where we're working with a practitioner. Those are higher level. When would we use higher level?
So we have something called Tro Plus Blue, and that is a 50 milligram strength methylene blue troche compared to the Just Blue, which is the consumer 16 milligrams. So the 16s are really mostly focused on mitochondrial optimization, helping you with mitochondrial function, improving energy production, detoxification. So this is really great for people that have chronic complex medical illness, autoimmune problems. They've had brain fog, long infectious syndromes like long COVID, chronic EBV, mold, chronic Lyme, without acute infection or chronic infection as an aspect of it, more the inflammatory aspects. Okay. The higher doses of methylene blue are really mostly used for chronic infection, acute infection, and also for acute mitochondrial stress. And so if you have an acute infection, for example, we can use up to about 2 milligrams per kilogram orally of methylene blue for 3 to 5 days and see significant benefit from the perspective of treating the infection. And we see this clinically. Methylene blue was the first antimicrobial that was ever around since 1897. And it was used for malaria, for urinary tract infections, fungal infections, bacterial infections, otherwise gram-negative infections. And it works really well for this because it increases the body's production of hydrogen peroxide in the body, which is something that the body actually produces to actually kill organisms. I don't know if you know that, but hydrogen peroxide is one of our main killing mechanisms in our body. We actually produce this ourselves in our cells to make bacteria, fungus, and virus die. And so methylene blue can help you increase that by these higher doses. So if you're using it for a chronic infection like chronic Lyme or chronic mold, you may need to have up to about 50 milligrams twice daily of methylene blue for weeks to months to really address the infection itself. And so in essence, 90% of people that I see fall into the mitochondrial optimization category, which is benefiting from between about 8 to 25 milligrams of methylene blue.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about Lyme's. Can this help with Lyme's?
So the co-infection Bartonella specifically, there is some evidence that higher doses of methylene blue can break up what are called biofilms. These are films that develop in the gut. People have teeth. Biofilms, everybody knows about the kind of film that you wake up and see on your teeth. That's a biofilm. Biofilms are these films that kind of protect areas typically, but they also can be a place where bacteria, fungus, and virus hide from the nervous system, the immune system specifically, where it's difficult for the immune system to actually address. So what methylene blue can do is it can break up biofilms in the gut. It can break up biofilms in the bladder as well. So if you have like a chronic UTI, or if you have something called like interstitial cystitis, which is kind of a pain, which is a pretty painful disease of the urinary system that causes pain with urination, methylene blue can help break up some of the biofilms there and treat those kinds of conditions, often in conjunction with other things, not just on its own. But in any regards, like these higher doses, 50 milligrams, 75, 100 milligrams of methylene blue can go a long way. But the key is to be really working with a practitioner if you're going to be using that kind of dosing. and then cycling on and off methylene blue if you're going to be using higher doses as well.
And are we cycling because it's building resistance, or are we cycling because it's a stressor to the body?
The higher doses are the latter, or can be a stress to the body. The lower doses, we don't have any indication that 16 milligrams of methylene blue is extremely stressful, nor does it need to be cycled. I do have some people that take it 7 days a week and no problem. If you get to above about 30 milligrams of methylene blue per day, that's when I typically recommend taking at least 1 day off per week. And then if you're up to about 70 to 100 milligrams a day, at least 2 days off per week to help the buildup, the potential buildup of methylene blue in the body. Now, that's unlikely if you have normal kidneys, but it is something that I like. But it does cause more stress on the system having those higher doses, because it does make the body produce more of that hydrogen peroxide, and that could be a beneficial thing because it treats infection, but also high levels of hydrogen peroxide over time deplete your own body's capacity to make antioxidants. And so you don't want that. So, or if you are going to do that, you have to be aware that's happening so that you can, compensate that by giving, glutathione, for example, in patients that are on high doses of methylene blue for long periods of time.
And is part of the reason that this is being so dogged on because people are going on Amazon and buying it and they're getting contaminated product?
Well, I think that's a really big thing that you just mentioned that's really important, is that the quality of methylene blue is all over the map. And this is something we really care about a lot at our company at Transcriptions. And it took us about 1.5 years longer to actually launch our company in 2020 than we anticipated, because it took us that long to find a reliable source of methylene blue. Methylene blue is a synthetic material. It's not from the ground. It could be contaminated on production with lead, cadmium, mercury, and arsenic. And there's tons of companies out there, on Amazon especially, that are selling liquid of undetermined quality, potency. And what we do at our company is we get our raw ingredients. It comes with third-party testing. It's called USP grade, which is pharmaceutical grade. But we don't trust any of that. We do all of our testing with an additional third party here in the United States, just to make sure that it actually meets the spec. And we've had to throw out thousands of dollars worth of material over the years. And you just don't know what you're getting on Amazon. And I'm sure there's some good companies out there. I don't know them, honestly. But the other problem, like, liquids are really difficult to dose. Liquids are always underdosed, meaning that whatever it says on the label never meets label claim. I haven't seen one that we've tested that does that. They get dilute, they get less active over time. And we've had tons of people that have taken the liquids at a certain dose, they think, and they've gone to our product instead of Transcriptions, and their effect is like night and day. Like, there's so much more power with our dosing at the same amount, in quotes, compared to the liquid. Liquids are also messier. They're hard to travel with. I don't recommend them under most circumstances. And the way we make the troches is that we make them in a pharmaceutical way, where we have a compounding pharmacist that supervises it. And so everything is homogenized in a way that you take a quarter of our Just Blue, which is 16 milligrams. It's going to be 4 milligrams every single time. It's not going to be like that pop brownie you had when you were a kid and everybody else didn't get stoned, but you did, because you had that one part of the brownie that had all the THC in it. And I'm not speaking from personal experience or anything like that. So.
Right. Not at all.
Yeah. So I think the key with the dosing with methylene blue is that most people are going to benefit from the lower doses. And in fact, I should mention that even if you have a chronic infection and like we think the higher dose is going to be helpful for you, you don't want to start at those higher doses typically, because it can be too stressful for your mitochondria, for your system. So you want to slowly titrate your dose. And then again, you want to be regulating your nervous system at the same time. And so, like, if you're in a chronic infectious state and you're chronically stressed all the time, I don't care how much methylene blue I give you. If I'm not starting to downregulate your sympathetic nervous system and optimize that autonomic balance so that you're more parasympathetic more of the time, you're still not going to heal. And so, like, a lot of my colleagues that work in the chronic infectious space, for example, have IV ketamine in their clinics for this reason. They use IV ketamine as a way to help people downregulate their nervous system and retrain their psychology so that they don't have that fight or flight on all at the same time. Now, not everybody needs ketamine for sure, but that's just one option as a way to help rebalance the nervous system and then deal with trauma if that's a big part of why the system is on overload all the time. So, but like in our company, we use the GABAergic products. We have something for stress, we have something for sleep, that leverage that GABA system, the brakes of your brain. So you can immediately feel stress relief, anxiety relief, tension relief. You can immediately feel like your mind is getting quieter and quieter, so you don't feel like you're just overwhelmed all the time. So, you're showing her. This is cool. I haven't had anybody do this in a while.
So you're talking like Tro Calm?
Tro Calm, yeah, exactly, yeah. Tro Calm is a combination of 4 ingredients that are all optimizing your GABAergic brakes of your brain. It has kava, CBD, CBG. Hemp extract is CBD and CBG. So these are non-psychoactive. Piper methysticum is from kava. And then I have something called nicotinol GABA, which is a vitamin B3 attached to the GABA molecule. So GABA, again, the brakes of your brain, it's responsible for calming down the firing. Many of us are GABA deficient. You can't supplement with GABA directly because GABA as a supplement doesn't get into the brain very easily. If it does work, if you take GABA and it does work, it's typically because your blood-brain barrier is not doing what it's supposed to do and it's leaking things in. And so it can be diagnostic in that way. So the B3 GABA allows it to get across nice and easily. And then as a result of that, you get this B3 in the brain and the GABA. B3 is mildly activating and the GABA is relaxing. So you get this sort of calm, focused, but not feeling tired at the same time. So it's a great combination for people. And so that's the one I use a lot in clinic, or I have mostly a telemedicine practice now, Adrian, but what I do is I have them get the Tro Calm, and then I have them take the Tro Calm while we're having a conversation or right before I'm going to have a conversation with them. And then in 15 to 30 minutes, we have the conversation and they will feel that down regulation of their nervous system. And then I like to coach people through how that's going to feel, because some people get very scared and sort of get this reflective anxiety related to being calm. So, and by doing that, you get to have the people that are experiencing this experience the feeling of what it feels to be like a calm person and a calm state. And then, you can get back there by various other things. So breath work, yoga, learning how to meditate, doing more resting and relaxation. Oh, this is what it's like to feel calm. And when your body starts getting to understand that, then you know how to get back there. So Tro Calm is great for that. And so as I'm working with people, especially with chronic complex medical illness, mitochondrial support, but then parasympathetic activation, like that's always got to go in combination, because if you're not doing that, like you're going to get into trouble, or you're not, that's the wrong way to, you're not going to see as much of a benefit as if you did them in combination, if you just did one or the other.
Are there any side effects to that? To the Tro Calm, other than people freaking out because they're calm?
The other thing about it is,
I'm gonna have to give this a try.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting experience, because when most people take anxiety medications, the anxiolytics, like your benzodiazepines of the world, they'll feel less stressed, but they'll also feel sedated at the same time. The difference between Tro Calm is that you're less stressed, but you're not sedated, because that B3 attached to the GABA that got into the brain, that B3 is mildly activating. So you don't feel stressed, but you don't feel sedated. And it's kind of a strange way to feel for most people, because it's usually in combination. When you take a sedative kind of or anxiety kind of medication, you feel sedated at the same time. So it takes some education. That's why I like to tell my patients about it first. Like, okay, you're going to take Tro Calm. This is how it's going to feel. We're going to walk you through it so you kind of have a good experience. Then you know what it feels like to feel calm. Then we're going to teach you breath work. We're going to teach you yoga. Or you're going to go learn yoga. You're going to go learn meditation. Or you're going to go start getting sun outside and listening to meditation, or getting your feet on the ground, or whatever it might be. There's thousands of strategies, right? Because the goal would be that you don't need Tro Calm over the long term. You just need Tro Calm in a pinch and as a way to help you understand what it feels like to calm down your nervous system. So that's how I usually kind of frame it. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of side effects from Tro Calm. The major one would be the sort of reflexive anxiety that happens when you feel calm. The other one can sometimes be, like a very rare number of people, if they take like a full troche, it could cause a stress reaction in very rare occasions, because the nicotinol GABA, because it has that B3, the vitamin B3 GABA, can be mildly activating. And so some people can have like an anxiety reaction to the B3, but it's extremely rare. I've only seen it maybe one time. So typically it's very well tolerated. The most common feedback that I get from it is that it didn't have any effect on me. And I think it's funny, because as soon as I started asking a couple more questions, like, well, yeah, you didn't feel more tired, but how was your anxiety? They're like, oh yeah, I didn't feel all that anxious. Actually, I really slept great, as I think about it, because you can use it as part of your day without feeling like you have to stop and take this compound or take this formula and then you can't do anything but sit on the couch. No, like you can still be with your kids. You can put away your alcohol at night, and instead of like when your kids go to bed and drinking your alcohol, your kids go to bed, you take your Tro Calm like I do, and then I'm smooth sailing for the evening. I don't feel tired. I just feel more relaxed, right? So it's a nice combination. I think it's so important with the people that are listening. It's like hammering the diet, like hammering the exercise, like you have to find ways to calm down the nervous system. If you don't, your system is going to break. And if it was already broken ahead of time and you're trying to fix it, you might have seen some benefit, but now you really got to focus on that mitochondrial parasympathetic dynamic, let me call it, right? So it's like focus on optimizing mitochondria. You're already doing it in a lot of ways. Something like methylene blue might help be a great support there too. But that parasympathetic, that balance, that dynamic, like getting your sleep dialed in, right, is huge, and getting your anxiety and your stress levels dialed in is really transformative to the whole process of healing.
Okay, so let's come up with a little plan here. So, first of all, when I took the Tro Canteen, um, I intentionally left it in
Yes.
my mouth just to be funny, but usually I swallow it. And you said that methylene blue is actually very, very, especially this one, bioavailable. So it's okay to swallow it. We don't have to turn our mouth blue, right? Is
When it
it more
comes to
effective if we leave it in our mouth?
so that just to I think maybe the only delineation I would make is that you are correct that methylene blue itself is 100% bioavailable whether you dissolve in the mouth or you swallow it. So it will be the same effect if you take pure methylene blue. The difference would be how fast it works, because methylene blue is going to be faster if you dissolve in the mouth. So in some people with more brain fog, concentration problems, memory, recall, it is better to dissolve in the mouth, even with pure methylene blue. But the blue cannatine, the one that you have there, because it's a combination of nicotine, caffeine with methylene blue and CBD, that combination is better in the mouth if you can, because the ingredients are going to be more bioavailable, meaning that they're going to be more active when they get into your system. That being said, you can swallow the blue cannatine, but you may need a slightly higher dose of it if you swallow it compared to if you dissolve in the mouth. In my example, for me personally, it's a quarter in the mouth and it's a half if I swallow it. But if I, but if I do like the pure blue, I can do a quarter and a quarter or half and half. It's the same thing.
Okay. And to get it off your teeth, I mean, for me, it was very easy. I just went and brushed my teeth, but you've also mentioned like hot liquids,
Yeah.
matcha tea, right?
Baking soda can
I
help too. Yeah.
actually feel like it makes my teeth look whiter, but some people said it actually shows impurities in their teeth. So,
It can. So they used to use methylene blue to paint the mouth to look for oral cancers back before there was better ways to do it. So dentists are using methylene blue. They used to use methylene blue a lot. And actually we have a lot of dentists now, interestingly, using our Tro Calm for patients before they go and get dental surgeries. So they take their Tro
oh,
Calm before they come to get their dental surgery, and they're so much more relaxed. They need less anesthesia, less Novocaine, less laughing gas if the places are still doing that. I don't recommend that in general, but if they do use that, then you need less of it to help them stay calm. So we have people doing regenerative procedures using Tro Calm ahead of time. Even for psychedelic psychotherapy, I have a friend of mine that does a lot of ketamine therapy for trauma, and he uses a lot of Tro Calm in the pre-treatments phases while you're getting ready for the ketamine itself, because again, it's down regulating the nervous system. And people, again, it's one of these things where, interestingly, in our culture now, Adrian, like there's a whole group of people that think, you know what, don't have to do anything else, just got to work on my trauma, and that's all I need to do. And that's not the answer either. I mean, it's a big piece of it, but it really has to be done in combination. And my colleagues and I lament about this because there's this huge push of like, the body keeps the score and trauma is everything. If you deal with the trauma, everything else is going to get better. The answer is that things will significantly improve, but the key really is to focus on both aspects, both on the parasympathetic aspect, re-regulating or down-regulating your sympathetic fight or flight to more balanced on the autonomic with the parasympathetic, right? And then also at the same time working on the system, right? If you have an infection, you got to deal with the infection. If you have a gut issue, like you need to deal with the gut issue. Like it's going to get much easier if your stress levels are better. I can tell you that, right? Nobody that I've ever treated has healed their gut with being sympathetic all the time, because you can't get enough blood flow to your gut if you're already in stress mode, right? So like, again,
mhm.
it's this dynamic, this parasympathetic mitochondrial balance that so many people are missing, even if they think they're doing all the right things. I know you've had this experience yourself, right? So I mean, I'm sure you can talk about that.
Yeah. And have you heard of EMDR?
Of course. Yeah.
EMDR was great for me. I used to like every time I would get a phone call, my blood sugar would drop, my adrenals would drop, my energy would drop, and I would feel like I need to faint every time my phone would ring. And I
Mhm.
did EMDR, and I don't have that reaction at all anymore.
That's amazing.
So,
EMDR is a fantastic way to deal with various levels of trauma, right? It's rapid eye movement, kinds of therapy along with a trauma therapist. And I've had fantastic experiences sending patients to EMDR over the years. And it's usually the first place that I send them actually is to EMDR. And then from there, depending on how they do, we might talk about things like, like ketamine, for example, which can be really great as a psychedelic focused way of resetting that nervous system to more parasympathetic. I just think, I think sometimes you just can't exercise and do more and expect more. Unfortunately, what our nervous system requires is oftentimes for us to do less. And then in that space of doing less is when we're healing, we're recovering, we're detoxing, right? That's all those parasympathetic things. But that's not our culture. That's not what we think. All of us think we just can do more and it's going to solve the problem. But unfortunately, in this case, doing less is typically the answer.
You're making me kind of realize that I'm probably stimulating myself when I'm trying to rest, because when I'm resting, I'm playing a game on my phone while listening to a Hulu video.
Yeah.
And so I'm stimulating, right? Instead of.
Yes. So when we first started the podcast, Adrian, I realized I had to increase my cadence about 1.5, which I speak fast already, but you're already speaking fast, right? So your nervous system is already on that sympathetic dominant side, right? And so it's really important for you and for people that are listening that are like us. I mean, I'm very similar to you, is that understand your cadence and understand that very likely you're not de-stressing as much as you need to. I can promise you. And if you're using lots of gadgets and gizmos and things like that to de-stress, it's probably not working too. As I found that the way to de-stress for most type A people that are on the stress side of things is to take away the technology, to take away the screens, and to find, like, go for a walk, do some nature, go outside, do some breath work, listen to a meditation. But knowing what it feels like to not feel stressed, I think, is the key. And that's what something like Tro Calm is really great for, because you have this, like, okay, that's what I feel like when my body's like, this is what I'm supposed to get back to. This is my goal, if you want to call it that, right? I don't like to make it like a goal per se, because, people that are go-getters love goals and then it becomes its own thing. But it's more like, this is the state that I'd like to be in. And if you've ever meditated before, or learned how to meditate, they talk about various meditative states, what it feels like to be selfless, what it feels like to be one with everything. Like when you have that experience, then you know what it feels like when you're in a meditative state and you have that experience. Otherwise, you don't appreciate it, right? Because you're like, oh, I don't know, I'm just doing this. I don't know what it means. I'm just like, you're on your screen doing Hulu and you think you're relaxing, right? And so it's like, you don't know until you know, kind of thing.
Yeah. I was worried that this conversation, some of the things I've been showing people, a lot of new things lately, a lot of new supplements, a lot of new blah, blah, blah. Everybody doesn't want a new supplement. Sometimes we just want to put our feet in the grass. And so it's nice that we're combining this conversation with, there are some supplements that can help move literally your cells, but also combining it with the other stuff. I would love to talk about your sleep aids.
Yeah.
So I tried your do you call it Soma?
Trosomna. Yeah.
Trosomna. I tried your Trosomna, and it was the first time ever that I've seen a normal stress score while sleeping. What the heck is in that?
I love it. Did you take the one with or without melatonin? Do you know?
With melatonin.
So we have two versions of that. This is our practitioner only product that's called Tro Plus Somna. It is really leveraging that GABA system to a significant degree and doing it with very unique ingredients. One of the ingredients is called agrin, which is from a psychedelic mushroom called fly agaric, or the amanita mushroom. It's the mushroom of Santa Claus, and it's got a big red cap and white spots, Mario Brothers. It's very, very famous in many different cultures for thousands of years. This mushroom has an ingredient called agrin in it that's not psychedelic, it's not toxic, and it's a long-acting molecule that works on the GABA system, and it works fantastically well. It sticks on the GABA molecule or GABA receptor for about 6.5 hours, and so it's very powerful and long-acting. And then it also has something called dihydrohanochiol beta (DHHB), which is a powerful derivative of the magnolia bark, which is also known to be an anxiolytic plant. And then the third ingredient is apigenin, which is from chamomile. It's also working on the GABA system. So it's a kind of a triple combo, high strength for people that really need sleep now. And the first name for Tro Plus Somna was Tro Plus KO, knockout, because it really does have the capacity to get you to sleep almost under any circumstances. And we have an option of with or without melatonin. And the melatonin was added because some people have a sensitivity to it. Most people can benefit from some of it. And, melatonin is, our sleep hormone. It helps us regulate our circadian rhythms. It's a significant antioxidant. It really helps our mitochondria as well. So all of those things are important. And so with melatonin on there, it can be very, very powerful. So so sleep, the Tro Plus Somna was really developed for moderate to severe sleep issues. Or you could take a very small amount of it, like a quarter or a half, or even like an eighth of it, and you can use that more regularly. But we have our commercial product, what's called is Tro Z, which is our 8 ingredient formula that's comprehensively working on sleep. From mild to moderate sleep disorder, can be taken regularly. Has the agrin in there, has another form of magnolia bark called hanakyle, has CBN, CBD, some other things on 5-HTP melatonin. Has some other things working on the other neurotransmitter systems that are involved, like the adenosine system in our brain. Fantastic, and really does work for the majority of people. So I usually have people start off with Tro Z and see how they feel, and then kind of titrate their dose. And if that's not working, the Tro Plus Somna is also available, but it's only available to practitioners right now. So if you're interested in it and you're listening, you can go to our website. We have a practitioner map where you can find a local practitioner to you, and you can find access to our practitioner only products, including our Tro Plus Somna with or without melatonin. But yeah, we've got a lot of that same experience, Adrian, that people take. How much did you take? Just a quarter of it, or how much did you take of the?
I took a half.
Half. Nice. Yeah.
And yeah, when you go, you have the two products. You have is it the Just Blue? No. Tro Blue, Tro Plus Blue
Tro Plus
is
Blue. Yep.
practitioner grade, and then the Tro Somna.
Yep, the Tro Plus Somna is practitioner only, and we have another one called Tro
So
Plus.
then you click the Find a Practitioner,
Yep.
and it brings you to a practitioner map, and you look for your area.
Right.
Or I'm sure some of these are telehealth as well.
Yeah, a lot of them are telehealth. So we have a lot of practitioners that see people, in person and both ways. So you find a practitioner, and it'll help you, get it prescribed. It's not a prescription, like doesn't need like on a prescribed like piece of paper or something, but it's more practitioner only because the Tro Plus Somna is very strong and it works well, but it's probably something you don't want to take, especially if you're taking like a half or more to get you to sleep. You probably don't want to be taking it like that more than 2 to 3 days at a time before you taking a break, because it's, probably the equivalent is about 5 to 10 milligrams of Ambien to take the Tro Plus Somna with melatonin. So that's great because it has a much better side effect profile, much lower risk for tolerance, withdrawal, dependence, and everything else the way we've developed it. But still, it's strong. So as a result of that, we'd want you to have more of a cycle where Tro Z is something you can take more regularly without having a cycle, because it's low doses of 8 different things together. And that 8 different things together with the low doses make it so that's much more supportive over the long term without potentially causing any sort of rebound effect if you stop it.
So all of these things are to just kind of get our body back into a more homeostatic way, right? We're trying to get our mitochondria back. We're trying to get our calm back. We're trying to get our sleep back. But it wouldn't, if we're doing the other things in combination with this, it's not something we should have to take lifelong, right?
Yeah. And we talk about this as a company, which is strange as a company that sells products, but the goal with the company is always meta gold, if you want to call it that, with our nonprofit organization, which is health optimization medicine and practice, where we're training practitioners on how to optimize health. And the goal was, over time, as you optimize your own health or the health of your clients and patients, if you're a practitioner, they're going to need less of these kinds of things to help them. So if they were needing Just Blue every day for the first 2 to 4 weeks, or maybe a little bit longer, but then you're optimizing their vitamins, their minerals, their nutrients, their stress, then you can start peeling this stuff off. And you don't need to take the Just Blue as often. Maybe you just need it when you're doing endurance racing, because it increases your aerobic capacity. You can go further. Or you're on an airplane and you're low oxygen, and what methylene blue can do is actually can compensate for that hypoxia that you get on an airplane, that low oxygen level. So you're just using kind of periodically, and correlated also with our Tro Calm. Once you learn how to dial in your nervous system a little bit better, you have Tro Calm for you on demand, and I use it sometimes. Well, lately it's been more than I'd like to, but it's there for me when I need it. Doing construction in my house, it's been crazy. And so and then we're living through it, of course. And then, but at the same time, when you learn how to do breath work, do meditation, get outside, get in nature, turn off your phone, you can do those things, and you don't need the Tro Calm, because you can do those things. And ideally, it's better to do those things than take Tro Calm if you can. Same thing goes with sleep. Hopefully, if you can dial in your sleep routine, you're going to optimize it in a way that you don't need something to help you sleep every night. And like for me, when I'm home, my sleep routine is dialed in and I don't need anything to help me go to sleep. However, if I'm traveling, or if things are going crazy or whatever, like then I have stuff that can help me, like the Tro Calm or the Tro Z or the Tro Plus Somna. And for me, I use the Tro Somna with melatonin when I travel at very low doses, like a quarter or even an eighth of that, because I'm super sensitive to it. But the Tro Z is what I use more often, kind of a more regular basis. If I need a little reset of the sleep, or if I'm have less overall need for significant support, where Tro Somna is more for that more significant need. But they both really work well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about this. If anybody would like to try your products, you can use the link down in the description, and you can use code BLAdrian for 10% off. If anybody wants to work with you, where do they find your practice?
So my clinical practice is a telemedicine practice. I do it in my home here, just outside of Boulder, Colorado. I work with people using this framework called health optimization medicine and practice, or home is actually the part that I do, the health optimization medicine piece. And so I work with people for a 6-month program looking at optimizing metabolic factors, vitamins, minerals, nutrients, cofactors, energy metabolism, detoxification, heavy metal exposure, looking at their gut, neurotransmitters, hormones, all these kinds of things, optimizing diet, lifestyle, stress response in a holistic way. But it takes time. And that's why we have the Transcriptions products to help us, and other things too. I don't just use Transcriptions products. I use tons of other things out there to help with my patients over the time that they need it and whatever they need. I like to think of myself as a conductor of all things health optimization. So, but if you go to my website, it's pretty simple. It's just drscottsherr.com, DRSCOTTSHERR. You'll see links to all of my various things. So my health optimization practice, my hyperbaric consulting, if people are interested in that, and of course my company's Transcriptions, and I have a hyperbaric company called One Base Health as well. So you can find everything there and kind of go where you like to go and choose your own adventure kind of thing. But I have a lot of education out there that I've done over the years on podcasts. Our website at transcriptions.com has tons of blogs, tons of information on all the things we discussed today, on all the aspects of our ingredients, of the research behind our ingredients, and why we use them. And that website was my website for my clinical practice of hyperbaric medicine specifically.
Yeah, and then I showed the transcriptions, and then your YouTube channel. I love it. It is hilarious. You recently had one of the funniest comments that you've ever gotten. Things that have turned blue, but also heartwarming stories. You've got the great one here. This, of course, Paul being part of my community, that's the first video I ever saw. So I was like, oh, I'm not taking that, But then I ran into a friend at a health conference who was on it, and I couldn't believe the energy change in her. And I was like, oh, I need to look into this. First of all, she's a very research person. So if she would try it, it's probably not as toxic as we're being told. But secondly, look at this woman. She's running around with all this energy. She felt so good. She felt so charismatic. She was just feeling better. And I feel like I'm a brain foggy person, and it really, really has helped. Just feel more normal. It doesn't feel jittery. Obviously, if you took a whole entire thing of Blucanatine, you'd probably be sitting here jiving. But if you just take a quarter of that, or of the Tro Blue or the Just Blue, it seems to really help with brain power.
Good. No, all good. I mean, I appreciate your perspective, and I know that a lot of people saw Paul's video and got concerned about methylene blue, but I didn't. In that video you were just showing, I went point by point in his video talking about how he needed a bit of re-education as to why this might be helpful, and actually some actual studies that had clinical relevance. The challenge with Paul is that he doesn't have a lot of clinical experience at all. And so him talking about clinical experience is challenging. If he's talking about his personal experience, no problem. But if he's talking about how you're going to feel on the carnivore diet, or I'm going to feel, like, he has no fucking clue. Excuse my language. Like, he just doesn't know, right? Because everybody's going to be different, right? And so that's the same thing. Like, you have some correlations, but just because it works for him personally, and he doesn't see patients, he doesn't know the nuances with that. And so with methylene blue, that's such an important piece of the calculation as to dosing, especially. The dosing is so key. 4, 8, 16 milligrams of methylene blue, not 50, 100, 200. Just don't do that unless you're working with a clinician, and get good stuff. Don't get the liquids if you can avoid it. Get our stuff if you can. Make sure it's tested. Make sure it's low on heavy metals or no heavy metals. Like, those are the key things. And then you start taking it and you titrate it slowly, and you're going to see the benefit. Like, I just, hands down, like, I've been just really impressed over the years at just the power of this particular compound.
And I noticed it. I don't know if it's just me or if I did it wrong, but it doesn't feel like I need to take it every day at all. I feel like I take it one day, I feel the brain power, I feel normal, I feel good. And I feel like it for days and days. I never even think of, oh, I should
That's
take
great.
that again.
Yeah.
Um,
That's
I think
everybody's going
that's
to be different
normal.
here. Everybody's going to be different. Some people take it a couple days a week and they're good. Other people need to take it on a daily basis, sometimes even twice a day initially to maintain that benefit. But again, the goal was hopefully to be able to wean them down on dosing and frequency as other things are coming back online, especially that nervous system balance, that I keep going back to. So
Well, Dr. Scott, this was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on. If you guys like this podcast, please like, subscribe, and share. Goodbye.